Leonardo da Vinci has this wonderful quote that I wrote down because I wanted to share it with all of you. And he says, "Painting is poetry that is seen rather than felt. And poetry is painting that is felt rather than seen." So we had this wonderful combination today. I feel like there's this magical process that happens when poets respond to art. You don't simply explain the art or describe it. You look at it, you get the sense of the emotion, the sound, the feel, and then create something that comes from your own personal experience. And when those two things are layered together and they merge, it makes an amazing combination. And it can lead to surprisingly personal and unique interpretations. In fact, today we're going to hear two examples of two entirely different responses to the same work of art. And for me as an artist, that is a very exciting thing to hear. So, today we're especially fortunate because when the poets read their poems out loud, we have three art forms. We have the visual art, we have the written word, and we have the performance. And the blend of the three is what I'm looking forward to most today. So our first reading pairs the drawing Collateral Damage, which is this one over here, with the words of Colin Bell. Colin is a novelist and a poet, also a former TV producer and director of arts programs for British, American, German, and Japanese broadcasters. His poetry collection, Remembering Blue, and his novels, Stephen Dearsley's Summer of Love and Blue Notes Still Frames, are published by Wood Publishing, and his poetry has been published by Acumen, Cinnamon Press, Frogmore Press, Shot Glass Journal, Soaring Penguin Press, the Fib Review, and a number of other anthologies in the US and the UK. Several of his fibs have been set to music as the song cycle Fibonacci Poems for Tenor Voice and Piano by American composer Tim Risher. In 2020, he made Muse Pie Press Featured International Poet, and his Fibonacci poetry has been twice nominated for the Pushcart Prize. He's based in East Sussex, England, so the distance makes it impossible for him to be with us today, and he sent this recording for us to listen to.
Aleppo. Stand back from yourself as smoke seeps in. Scream, mouth, if you can. Stretch back, lips. Diaphragm and lungs cry horror. Eyelids shut by masonry dust. Ears search inwards, sealed by an unheard dirge. Fragments of home coat your face like a mask. Cry without tears. Shout without words. Vision narrows to close down. Fear penetrates beyond nostril deep. Stumble forward. Escape the darkness. Your face a void. Arms hang loose. Legs try to crumple but daren't. Voices call you out from the ruins, no longer home. Darkness bleeds tears. Tread ankle deep where black dilutes red. Spotlit from the front, there can be no cover. Naked through rags, bones bleach, cameras flash. Look down and help us look away. We too are stumbling, escaping the light. More frightening than black is white.
Surprise decision, the jurors also selected Dana Hunter's poem, Mother to Myself, in response to Collateral Damage, the same picture. Hearing the two poems by Colin and Dana in response to the same work of art is the perfect illustration of how we layer our own narratives onto sensations produced by visual imagery. Dana I. Hunter is a top poet in the National Alliance on Mental Illness New Jersey, Dara Axelrod Expressive Arts Poetry Contest. Her work has been published in the National and International Goddess Anthology 2024, Journal of Undiscovered Poets, New Jersey Bard's Poetry Review, Anthology 2023, Love in the Original Language Anthology, Table Feast Literary Magazine, Open Minds Quarterly, and Mightier, Poets for Social Justice. Living with bipolar disorder, she's an African-American writer who advocates for mental health and ending its associated stigma. Dana.
Mother to myself. I place my being in the cupboard shelf behind the French-cut string beans and the fifth of vodka from your latter years. As I choose to escape my present state, I go out with a flicker of knowledge. It was you who destroyed me from the moment I emerged, toxic and addicted to your approval. You've created a debutante lost in a burnt crinoline dress, never bright enough for a mother's love, so I avoided mirror's reflections as a young girl. Clone of a clone, you've led me on a journey of self-hatred without knowing the definition of self. Ignited within me, I call your attention to the warmth I've created with tears aflame, tiny in their appearance, mighty as they burn.
Our next presenter, Elizabeth Levine, whose poem was inspired by Where Sabbath Once Was Sweet. This one right here. His first poetry chapbook, The Ribbon Around the Bomb, was published in 2019 by Finishing Line Press. Her second chapbook, God Doesn't Live at Our House Anymore, was written under the pseudonym of Charlotte Clear. She's also the author of poetry chapbooks Ranting, The Darkest Hour of the Soul, and Traumaland, all scheduled for publication in 2025. Her novel, All That Remains, has been adapted as a play under the title And She Was There by Dixon Lane. Several chapters of her novel have appeared in New Jersey Selected Shorts, Map Literary, the William Patterson University's online literary journal, and the Northeast Modern Language Association. Listen.
Thank you everyone for coming, and thank you Heather for the beautiful art show. And I think all of us who read today would say the work inspired the poetry. And when the other chapbooks come out, I want different paintings to be the cover art. So this painting, When Sabbath Once Was Sweet, spoke to me because I'm a lapsed Jew, like many of us. And so here we go. When Sabbath once was sweet, I wept for Brooklyn, for the pink tiles of my childhood bedroom on East 21st Street between Avenues J and K, Ocean Parkway, a magical kingdom we walk to on Shabbos. When we enter exile, I walk past Kelly green manicured lawns, each a perfect rectangle. In New Jersey, I am a pentagon. My sides and shapes match and contain all the empty space of a God-shaped hole in my heart. The green, grotesque grass in this new neighborhood, absent sidewalks or barbed wire fences with broken glass bottles, remind me of the traffic light at the Grand Army Plaza Library, where the statues of lions guard the books, where my mother brought us by bus each Saturday for children's story hours. I forfeit my memories of Russian chess players and their timers, and in Prospect Park, the Caribbean cricket clubs, the Hasidic Jews strolling across Brooklyn Botanical Gardens, a visual reminder that Jews will perpetually wander. Thank you.
Okay, here we go.
Our next presenter is Julianne Valdepenas. She's a rising junior at Pace University, majoring in English language and literature. She has written an alternate response to the same work of art.
I'm sorry, I only have my phone. This is called Sabbath Has Multiple Meanings. Sabbath meant to rest. There was a time and a place where Sabbath once was sweet. A time and a place where you could feel peace. A time and a place where someone could breathe. Genesis says, "And there was evening, and there was morning one day." One day, Sabbath did not mean to rest. Rest did not even mean to rest. Sabbath meant to cease. To cease the firing, to cease the fighting, to cease the starving, to cease the houses from crumbling, to cease the hospitals from being targeted, to cease the children from crying, to cease the parents from grieving, to cease the bodies from falling. Sabbath is something else. Sabbath means to cease. Sabbath means mercy. But that is not a word that parliaments and congresses and councils ever want to say. To them, Sabbath is weak. Sabbath is the seventh day when God rested after creating the world. It is always the gods who get to rest. The gods get to sleep. Gaia went to sleep, as did Apsu and Tiamat. The gods are gods, and so they get to have their Sabbath. But do us mortals ever get to rest? Do the gods or the suits ever try to cease? Will they ever desist? How can we ever rest? The body of my daughter will be seen as a battleground for powdered, polished politicians on TV who talk over one another, piling on empty promises that would never come true because promises are not in the budget. The body of my daughter will be judged for taking up too much space. The body of my daughter condemned for the clothes that she wears. The body of my daughter that must always be chaste because her chastity means all of our honor. The body, the body, the body. Always the body, but never my daughter. Always the body, but never the person. It was the women who marched and shouted and were beaten and ignored. It was the women who saw those who were pushed away and spit on and neglected and hit and leered at and hated. It was the women who went out and yelled at the gods for their stagnant rest. It was the women who birthed the heroes. It was the women who were burned at stakes. It was the women who confronted the gods. The gods who sit behind white columns with their papers as they argue over whether the mortals deserve food to eat or beds to sleep in. The gods who cannot decide whether Pandora owns her body if it was a man who sculpted her. The gods who lie and cheat on one another, yet punish the mortals for doing the same. The women were brave enough to march to the palace of the gods and scream for fire as the mortals were freezing down below. The women will never know Sabbath. Sabbath is meant to be holy, so why can we never rest?
Pleiades. She's a clothing designer, writer, and artist residing in Hudson Valley, New York. Her process begins with questioning, and her inspiration comes from deconstructing stereotypes. She says she enjoys the abstract and the metaphorical realm, where you can find answers without seeking. She thrives on the interdependence of words and visuals that help her translate an idea. She'll present her poem on oil sketch, Her Inheritance.
I'm really grateful to be here, and this poetry helped me look into my own codependency. Here we go. The collective, the knots we tie, knowingly, unknowingly, dictated by power, bring us together to suffer a common wrath. You, me, her, tied to one umbilical cord, yet waiting for a hero to show up on a horse. It's time to pull the force towards our direction of freedom. Thank you.
David Stanford Burr is the author of the poetry book Legerdemain Poems, The Poet's Notebook, Inspiration Techniques and Advice on Craft, and he was the selection editor of 7 hardcover poetry anthologies. He taught at New York University as an adjunct associate professor, leading poetry workshops for 25 years. David was a managing editor at Macmillan Publishers for 36 years and has edited 297 poetry books, including the last 17 Best American Poetry Series annuals. His current project is a collection of his own World War I poems from the perspective of the British Expeditionary Force in the trenches on the Western Front. The work he will present today is in response to Landscape of Fear.
Thank you, Heather, for this inspiration. Ouch. Yes, in keeping with my 6-year-long project of writing World War I poems, this is called Beyond the Wire. It has an epigraph, Flanders, 1915. Fog obscures our barbed wire, thank God, not gas. I must keep a sharp eye for what might be coming over no man's land. Listen hard for the snip of wire cutters. 2 hours of sentry duty before relief comes. And I can't let my mates down by sleeping when their lives depend on me, as does mine. Avoid court-martial and firing party. I must stay awake and keep my mind active. Oh, I read barbed wire tamed the U.S. West, kept cattle in. Here keeps invaders out. Maybe, too, it keeps us slyly in. I will have to think further about that. Indians call it the devil's rope. Farmers who homesteaded the plains set it in place, a cheap, easily constructed method to stake out, then take the land they wanted. Ah, so simple. Double strands of steel wire, twisted to fix the space bars in place, coils of sharp tangs, mini bayonets, wrapped round one wire, then the other strand anchors them. 16 bars per foot of wire, 4 twisted points to each barb, all galvanized against rust. But we are not staying here that long, as strategic offensive is foremost in the mind of the brass hats in their chateaus. Loss of maneuverability after the race to the sea left us stuck in static trenches, trench-locked, where the Huns had the higher, drier ground, well dug in, defense in depth. We are on the back foot. Through the mist, about 800 yards out, is Concertina, more formidable than ours. Wire we do not want to hang on after the officer's next whistle charge. Getting too sleepy, must stop nodding. Barbed wire had been used before. Kitchener in the Second Boer War used it two ways, defensively and more offensively. Concentration camps, where 26,000 Boer women and children died. Separate camps for blacks, with 20,000 more dead. Father, who served there, once said, "That was not our proudest moment." I wonder how many future innocents will suffer, kept in or kept out by such offenses. I reckon I'm an innocent too, conscripted into war I did not want, but I am compelled for the duration. Huh? Those bristling points on wire, how long will they cast their shadow of fear across this one and many further yet hellscapes? Ah, Jones, my relief is here, and I'm off to the dugout to grab much needed kip. Tomorrow night, I'll be out repairing the wire which keeps us alive, shelters us in our zigzag trench grave from the North Sea, Belgium, to Switzerland, 400 miles. Thank you.
Okay. Diana Cole, a Pushcart Prize nominee, has published her work in numerous journals, including Poetry East, Spillway, Main Street Rag, Cider Press Review, Friends Journal, The New Verse News, Horizon Books. Her chapbook, Songs by Heart, was published in 2018 by Iris Press, and her latest book, Between Cells, by Indian Press. Recently, she was awarded second place in Notable Works 2024 Poetry Initiative. Her work today is a response to the drawing Other.
Chain Link Barrier, after Other, by Heather Stivison. Just the other day, I was walking on the other side of town, crowded with small houses, other kinds of front yards, without a privet hedge, other boundaries like a chain link fenced to prevent trespassing on another's lawn or stealing a Virgin Mary or some other prized lawn ornament. It's not surprising we find other uses for this acclaimed feat of engineering, other than enclosing modest plots of land, other uses to keep some people in and others out. A prison perimeter or other barrier like a border wall so no one can walk right in. What other choice but twist one steel strand around the other to stop the invasion? To stop the others from climbing, we coil another wire, barbs every half-inch across the rim. How many hands bleed? How many others fall back, failing to reach the other side? If we could see this other hand as our, not as other, where we risk a terrible contagion.
Another surprise by the jury was the decision to include two poems by the same writer. We were surprised by the number of poets who submitted poems responding to multiple works, and others who submitted multiple poems for one work. This made the selection process very challenging. In the end, though, the decision was made to include two of Elizabeth Levine's submissions. She's already been introduced, so here she is again, this time responding to Strangers in a Strange Land.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to say David and Dana and I are in the same poetry critique group. We've never met in person. And David is my copy editor, and he's the best I know, but I'm up to correction 436 out of like 1,300, and I'm hoping to finish that project before I die. Okay. So I love this for many reasons. Stranger in a New Land, 1905. I arrived shattered, burdened by my shy, shabby suitcase, stuffed with immigrant dreams. I must survive, climb boldly into this brave, new, alien world, absent armor, swaddled only in the schma. We stood obediently, like cattle, waiting to be branded. The pogrom we barely escaped, a tattoo just behind our leaden eyelids, drooping with grief, devoid of tears, bone dry. My Star of David hidden beneath my white, long-sleeved blouse, stinking of my own sweat from the stale heat of the Ellis Island waiting room, in between my swollen breasts, where nobody could see who I was, where I came from, where the Ukraine and my religion would not kill me, so long as I did not kill myself first. Thank you.
Should we have a shot of our guests here? All right.
Excuse me.
Rolling.
Our final poem is by Mary Jane Grandinetti. It's the perfect poem to end with. You'll see why. She has had her poetry published in various journals and international poetry anthologies. Her collection of Fibonacci poems, Chocolate Sauce, was published by Muse Pie Press in 2008. Grandinetti is a poet who has a special interest in short forms of poetry and their influence on the poetic voice. She runs online workshops on the various forms of short poetry. She is the editor of 2 online journals, The Fib Review, a journal of Fibonacci poems, and Shot Glass Journal, a journal for short poetry, both published by Muse Pie Press. She will present her poem in response to Traces.
Thank you, and thank you, Heather, for the opportunity to experience your artwork firsthand and be able to write about it. Heather and I go back in the 70s. We were just talking about that today. We were involved in poetry groups way back then. We continued with poetry, and she's continued with her artwork. This past weekend was celebrated in New Zealand was Matariki, which is a celebration of Pleiades. And here we are in the Pleiades Gallery, which is kind of the new year for Maori, and kind of a new year and a new experience to see Heather again after all these years. This piece moved me, and I called it Shadow. In the darkness, you cannot see where the shadow starts, or if the danger lies before you. You summon courage from within. Your heart beats hard. Light comes, rises from within. You strive all your life to seek out goodness in others, but these dark forces, reality is not clear. The curtain closes behind you, and before you there is a panel of choices. Flip the right switches and let the voting booth sing.
Well, I just want to say thank you to all of you. It has been awesome to hear your work, to hear it out loud, to meet some of you face to face. And if you, I'm going to turn the air conditioner back on. And if you'd like to enjoy some of the reception, if you'd like to chat, discuss each other's poems, please do. Thank you so much.
And by the way, great art that's around
You get to me again, so right?
Take 2.
the great, yeah, take 2. The great art that's around us.